potential bills and what they are and how they could potentially impact us. Just a quick note.
Apologize, bad word. Any questions on those line items? Okay. So then we're going to talk about the budget resolution. So this is what you're actually going to ask you to adopt is the resolution and then attachment A. So it's in your backup. I provided you with a sheet. On the front side is the resolution, and on the back is the full budget. What this does is it gives Raymond and I the authority to make budget transfers of no more than $10,000. And if we do make a budget transfer, then I'm going to bring you back a report at the following board meeting to let you know, hey, I want to let you know we amended our budget. We've never had to do an operating budget transfer before. We added this language last year to give us a little bit of flexibility if we needed it. We did not need it in 2019. Hopefully we won't need it in 2020, but if we do make a change to our budget, we'll bring it back to you at the next board meeting and most likely give you, Ms. Wilson, an update through an email just so you know what's happening as it happens.
Do you notify the chair of the finance committee prior to doing that?
We can do that as well, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so we've never done it, but that's certainly sure, we can do that, absolutely.
I actually think it's a courtesy, since the finance committee is the one that really has developed and oversees the budget,
Sure.
that if you intend to do that, if you would just like contact the chair and let them know,
Absolutely.
him know.
So
That way, if he's wants to visit or has any concerns about it, he can address it before the action, then he can report. Since he has to report
Right.
per this resolution, is probably more, I would prefer that the finance chair just be notified prior to any action so that he's aware of it and then he can report.
Okay.
I mean, you can
do that.
notify me after the fact, that's fine.
Okay, we'll do that. So you bring up a great point. We actually took this budget to the Finance Committee back in July. No members from that committee are here today. I promise it went swimmingly, and they were very enthusiastic that you all adopted the budget.
Absent because they don't want to defend it.
Okay, so we've never brought to you the bike share operating budget before, and it used to be categorized as a project as it was getting off of the ground, but now it's really an operational thing. So I wanted to bring it to you just so you kind of get an idea of what we spend on an annual basis. We do have healthy ridership. E-bikes just launched at the beginning of this month. We're already seeing an uptick in activity. I saw someone riding one home dressed similar to me up Stanton on Tuesday afternoon. I thought that was really cool. We do need sponsorships, and I was just talking with Caesar, our operator, this morning. He's got a call set up with someone today and is trying to get in front of a couple people today, so hopefully that goes well. We are anticipating a little uptick in our user fees just because the e-bikes tend to spur Trek, who we work with, V-Cycle. They've seen that in launches other places, that once those e-bikes go out, people purposely try to find those. They'll find a bike at one station, ride it to another station, and then take the e-bike around. So we're hoping to see an uptick in user activity and fees for us. And then we're anticipating some sponsorships. And then we still have a little bit of remaining grant funds that we received early on in the project. And then transitioning to our costs, we pay our operator and his staff. We pay software fees for the operation of the stations themselves. We have to buy replacement parts for our bicycles. We pay for a little bit of travel for the operator to go to an event held by the manufacturer that we work with in Wisconsin. And we pay for wireless out to the sites, each of the stations. And then we pay for insurance and credit card fees as well. And most of those are fixed. Credit card fees are going to vary based on what types of cards are used and how many swipes we get. But for the most part, we know what our costs are, and it's about $200,000 a year. And just to point out, we only make about we're hoping to make $90,000 in operating revenues. No bike share turns a profit. They either have sponsorships or they get grants from government agencies, but it's not something that makes a big profit. So I wanted to provide that with you. So I do have a recommendation out of the Finance Committee from last time. They did vote to recommend approval of the budget.
Are there any questions about anything? Yes, sir.
The grant, is there a dry up date for that grant right now?
No, so we were actually given all of those monies and we have them. Some of the grant funds have to be used towards capital, so we use those to actually buy the bike share bikes. But there's no expiration date that I'm aware of on the bike share funds. It's for us to use.
But it is a capped amount. That is the
It
amount.
is capped amount. We could go out and ask for more grant funds if we wanted to. I think
It's renewable, right? I mean, are there opportunities to get more grant dollars if you want to grow the program or continue to support the program?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
that's what I thought.
Absolutely.
Right.
So.
You just need to manage that, though.
Yeah, so and that's my question. So if that, when that evaporates, is it sponsorship or more grants that's gonna replace it?
Likely both.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And who is responsible for doing that? The administrator?
Us. We are.
Or us?
So we require the operator to go after sponsorships. The grant component is us.
Okay.
I mean, if you go back a slide where you show the breakdown of the revenues,
Yes.
without the grants to support the budget, it's probably going to be difficult for you to get enough out of fees and sponsorships to totally
Right.
offset that, unless it becomes just such a huge program. But the operating costs will probably then increase exponentially too.
And we're not capping sponsorships at that by any means. We'll be aggressive in trying to get
Any
more
kind,
than
yeah.
that. Yes, ma'am. But that's just
Okay.
what we hope, a fair estimate of what we anticipate getting in the upcoming year.
Are there any other questions or discussions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget.
So moved.
I have a motion,
Second?
a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
presentation.
So I'm actually up next as well.
Okay.
Lucky guy.
Stay here.
So, okay, let me make sure I didn't jump too far here. No, I didn't. Discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the executive director to execute one or more engagement letters with the following firms: Gibson, Ruddick Patterson LLC for the fiscal year 2019 annual audit, and Pena Briones McDaniel Company for the provision of certified public account services.
So first, we'll tackle the audit. This is our fifth time with this audit firm. So again, the agreement was made 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We had a 3-year agreement with 2 options to extend for 1 year. So this will be our last opportunity with Gibson, Ruddick Patterson. We will be going out next year in a procurement for audit services. It does include a $500 increase. That was part of the contract. It's about 4%. It's very reasonable. And so with that, I would ask for your approval for this contract, or this engagement letter.
Any questions? I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving forward, number 2.
Thank you. So we actually have 2 engagement letters here with Pena Briones. One is for our work, one is for that county work that I mentioned before that you all entered into agreement. So first, I'd like to discuss ours. Ours is up to $25,000. This year, they did request a fee increase of $10 an hour for our primary person and $10 an hour on the principal. We've worked with them for 7 years. We've never had a fee increase. So we were paying them the same amount that we were in 2012 when we first started with them. I do think the amount is fair. If it had been in place this year, we would have still been under $25,000. So I don't think we'd have a problem. We did talk with them and said, you know what, this could put a little bit of a burden on us. If we need to adjust the budget or come back to you all, we will, to say, hey, look, we're trending a little bit high. I'm hoping that I get to take over more and we have fewer needs for them to do it. We've seen that. It's trailed off this year. The second half of the year, especially since the audit was done, is we've had very minimal costs except for routine items. One concern I have is that the 2 people that we really worked with the most at the city are both leaving at the end of this week. That's going to just create some challenges depending on who steps into those roles and their familiarity with the RMA. That may require a little bit of more assistance from our outside consultant. Should be me that's handling that, but that may be something that impacts us. We will still plan to be under the $25,000 threshold. If we had that increase this year again, it would not have impacted us. Second is the county work. Oh,
What's the financial impact of that raise, a dollar amount?
so for our primary consultant, it's going from $90 an hour to $100, and for the principal of the firm, it is going from $160 to $170. So an 11% increase and like an 8 or 7% increase. But again, these are the rates they gave us in 2012, and we've been using this whole time. So
No, so total, what do you anticipate?
What's the budget, what is
dollars?
the amount of budgeted hours that you anticipate using this year?
So I didn't run on budgeted hours. We're going to finish this year probably about $22,500 once August wraps up. So if we add just 10% to that, we would be in line with where we are. And I think last year we used more because I was meeting with Melissa a lot to get up to speed and learn things, and she helped with some things during the audit that I'm going to be doing this year. So I would imagine we're going to use them less, so I do not anticipate it having much of an impact. If we start to see it, especially after the audit, that we're running high, we'll bring it back to you and let you know.
Thank you.
So the county work is something that, to provide a little bit of background, actually a year ago this August, you passed a resolution directing the executive director to work with the county to come to an agreement. And then when it came back to you in February, as we had some modifications to it, that agreement was just signed in early June by the county. So now we've got the engagement letter from the accounting firm. We're going to pay them $3,000 a quarter or $1,000 a month. County will pay us, we will pay them, but because it's going to run through us like that, we need to have an engagement letter and bring it to you all since it'll be part of our operating budget. It's outside of the VRF bonds, but it's part of the VRF program, additional accounting services that they requested.
Any questions on that? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved?
Second?
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So item number 9, presentation and required training on ethics and the requirements of the CRRMA internal compliance program.
Okay, this is our last presentation for the day. We've got with us Brian O'Reilly, who is with the Locklord Law Firm out of Austin. He's going to, this is an ethics training that's required periodically by TxDOT, I believe. Actually, I'm just going to turn it over to him. He's going to tell you what we're going to do.
Thanks, Raymond. How do I slide through the? Oh, it's down here. Okay. Good morning, Brian O'Reilly, outside legal counsel with Locklord. As Raymond said, this is your part of your internal ethics and compliance program that TxDOT is required from TxDOT because we receive funds from them. It's required periodically, and it's designed to detect and prevent violations of law and regulations and ethical standards, and it applies to all board members and employees. So it's essentially, it encompasses provisions that are in a number of policies. It's pretty complex, and I know that all of you have a long, extensive public service history, so a lot of this will be familiar to you, but it's good to be familiar with it and what your obligations are as a board member. Your ethics and compliance policy, which I'll refer to as the ICP, the bylaws, the conflict of interest policies, your record retention act, drug and alcohol policy, all of that will be encompassed in the presentation. So these are the topics we're going to go through today. And please stop me if you have any questions. If you have a specific question about something with you, it may be best to discuss it afterwards, but I'm happy to go through it. So the first one, on conflict of interest. So this is straight from the Transportation Code and the Administrative Code, and these are the items that you're prohibited from doing. And the first two are subjective. You're prohibited from accepting employment or engaging in a business activity that might induce disclosure of confidential information or impair independence of judgment, or make investments that could create a conflict between your private interest and that of the RMA. And again, that's something that really only you can say in making that analysis. Now, the rest of this is you can't have a personal interest in an RMA contract. You can't be employed by or own, control more than 10% interest in a business that's regulated or receives funds from TxDOT or the RMA or the city. And you cannot use or receive a substantial amount of goods, services, or money from any of those entities. Now, what you must do, there's two affidavits that you need to consider when items are before you. It's a 171 affidavit and a 176 affidavit. A 171 affidavit, you would have to abstain from participation if it applied. And for 176, it's a disclosure statement that you would make within 7 days of becoming aware of the issue. So on the 171, it applies if a matter involves a business entity or real property in which a board member has a substantial interest if the action will have a special economic effect on the entity. And I normally try to avoid reading things, but it's dense and this is pretty unavoidable here. But what a substantial interest is, the way it's defined in the law, is it's a business industry in a business entity means that 10% of the share, you own 10% of the shares, 10% or $15,000 of the fair market value of the entity, or receipt of funds that exceed 10% of the previous year's income. Now, for the real property aspect of this, it means ownership with a fair market value of $2,500. It's now a special economic effect. Now, that's the one that would require some analysis, but it means an effect distinguishable from the effect on the general public. So, for instance, if you owned a gas station along an RMA project and there was going to be an exit ramp directly to your gas station, I think that's arguably could be a special economic effect. And you must file the affidavit before you vote. And that's key to remind you that to review your board packets before meetings and know the entities that are subject to the vote and whether you do have to comply with this. Now, for a 176 disclosure, which is a newer requirement than 171, this is required. You'd have to file it if you or your family member have employment or other business relationship with a vendor that results in taxable income of $2,500 or more in the preceding year. If you accept gifts from the vendor in an aggregate value of $100, which is a very low threshold, in the preceding year, or if you have a family relationship with the vendor. And again, it must be filed within 7 days of becoming aware. And you file it with Raymond, and it's be posted on the website. And you could still participate in the matter, but you just have to disclose it. So gifts and honoraria. Board members, you cannot accept or solicit a gift that might reasonably influence you in the discharge of your duty. Again, that's subjective. You can't receive a gift from a potential vendor during a pending procurement or an honorarium for appearing at a conference. What you can accept is reimbursement for the actual expenses incurred in the performance of your duties, which would include transportation, lodging, and for some of those conferences. You just couldn't receive the honoraria. And you can accept gifts from family members or friends that are independent of your status with the RMA. The acceptance of any gift is subject to conflict of interest laws, and if you're unsure, please ask Raymond or myself. The next one, for use of RMA property, this is probably more applicable to the employees, but it's just know that computers and software, everything that's leased by the RMA or lent by the city of El Paso should be used only for RMA business, and lost or stolen property must be reported immediately. It's the Public Information Act. I know everyone's familiar with that, and there's been some significant legislation passed this session dealing with this, and really with the nuts and bolts of how this kind of works as an agency. But essentially, just know that any communication regarding RMA business, regardless if it's on your personal device, where it goes, is subject to the act. We recommend avoiding using personal email and social media accounts for RMA business. If you do, forward the communications to the RMA server. Do each board member have an RMA email address? And
Yes.
So, yeah, one of the best practices is just, if you use your personal, if something comes in, it's unavoidable, forward it to your RMA email address, and then you can be done with it. It's on the server, and then that's all you need to worry about. And you need to preserve any communications that are subject to litigation holds. So those are kind of the high points of, it's a pretty complex area of law, but that's some of the main recommendations to think about. On the next item, open meetings. So here, what's important for you to think about is the walking quorum issue. There was legislation passed this session, actually, which revised the standard for how a walking quorum, what that means and how that applies to you. And what it is a violation if you knowingly engage in at least one of a series of communications that occur outside of an open meeting that would constitute a quorum. So if one board member contacted another, and then contacted another, and then one more through a series of text messages or phone calls, that would be a walking quorum and would be a violation of the law. So that's important. Reply all. We recommend that if emails from staff to board members be BCC, so we can avoid that. Don't participate in a meeting that's not been properly called, and be aware that public officials can be held criminally liable for violations of the Open Meetings Act. It's rare, but it happens. Personal financial statements, RMA directors are required to file these. They're due on April 30th of each year. There's an electronic filing system. I believe all of you have done that before and are aware of that requirement. Compliance standards and procedures. Says this is from your ICP. It's a suspected violation of the law. It must be reported immediately to the director or the chair. The ED or the chair will take and enforce the appropriate remedial measures or sanctions, and retaliation for reporting suspected violations will not be tolerated. If you have any questions or on a specific matter, please bring them to Raymond, or you can contact us here. And I think Raymond shared this presentation with you, so you'll have that information. And that's it. Do you have any questions? All right.
When we do the TWC training, we have to go online and like have tests after each thing. It's really onerous. So I'm glad that.
I'll bring a test next time.
No, don't do that. All right, thank you so much. Any questions? Anything else before we move on? Okay, so we're moving on to item 10. There are two parts. 10B and item 11, we're going to go into executive session, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to, let me read, I'll read them all. I'll read item 10 into the record, 10A. Presentation, discussion, and possible action on the following items. A, establishing a date for the CRRMA Board's strategic planning session. This is on the agenda at the request of some of the board members. Several months ago, shortly after I joined the board, there were some conversations about us having a planning session where we could like talk more strategically and set forth some goals. And so I had suggested that we look at maybe the last couple of, instead of looking for a separate date, take one of our board meeting dates that we normally have scheduled. I think November 11th and November 13th and December 11th, are they not normal meeting dates, the second Wednesday?
November 13th and December 11th, that's correct.
Yes. And then what my thought was, we could convene and take care of just very basic business. So I would ask that there only be things that we needed action on, and push and delay any kind of just general presentations. And then we could then move then into a planning session. It would have to be open to the public. We can't do it in an executive session. But I suggested to Raymond that perhaps we could just use the executive session boardroom. It's very comfortable. And then I had reached out to Tracy Yellen at the Paso del Norte Foundation to see if she would be available on either of those dates to facilitate, to bring, because we would want a like independent facilitator. She has facilitated for the workforce board on several occasions with our planning effort and has done a really great job. And she typically does not charge a lot either. So she said that she would be open to doing that if you would be receptive. If you'd like for us to go out and secure other services, we're happy to do that too. But when it first came up, I thought about her simply because she had done that as a consultant when she was doing consultant work, and she's very effective and engaging, has a good process. And considering there's only 7 of us, I mean, we don't need, I don't think, anything really formal. She managed like 26 board members really well, and we had a very productive session. I just want to make sure we have 100% participation. So since there's only 4 of us here, are either of those dates a problem for either one of you?
November
13,
13th.
Wednesday?
Okay,
These are our regular board meeting dates
and the 11th,
of December, yeah.
yes. I'm good.
Are you good?
We're fine.
Okay, so we're all 4 good. Would you, Mr. Norwich, you're out there. Do you have a problem with either of those dates?
Make it work.
Okay. And then would you check with the other 2, with Les and the Mr. Chapman?
Yes, ma'am.
It's because I want to make sure we have 100% participation if we can. My suggestion would be do it on the 11th of December, kind of the year end, wrap it up so that we start the year afresh. But if you prefer to do it on the 13th of November, that's fine with me too. Let's check with those other folks and make sure which one we have 100%. And then we can set it. And then I'll confirm with Tracy the date.
Think we can accomplish it all in one day?
I think we can. So we'd meet at 9, try to finish business by 9:30 at the latest, and then just convene into the other room and then start the process. I can get with Tracy in advance. Typically what she'll do is some advanced outreach like a questionnaire and stuff, so everybody has an opportunity to have some individual input. She'll synthesize that. She'll bring it back and kind of use that as the basis to frame our discussion. I would think that we could go from 9:30 to maybe 1:30 or 2, have lunch. We can order lunch, keep it formal. Keep it informal, and then see where we're at. If we need to, if we don't finish everything, then we can tabulate everything we've got, and then bring it back to the January meeting, and then kind of wrap it up then, potentially, if we needed to.
So it would be on 11 December.
Are you okay with that?
I'm good.
You good?
Yes.
December's better.
December's better? Okay, so let's target 11th of December. I'll follow up with Tracy. I'll have her get with you, Raymond, because she'll
Sure.
want to work with you and Robert on like a process. And then just follow up the other 2 board members to make sure they're available.
I'll do that.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to read the next items, and then I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session. Presentation, discussion, and possible action on the CRRMA's role on the Border West Expressway project. Discussion and action on board resolutions for the following items as they relate to the employment of the executive director in order to, 1, approve the annual performance evaluation and authorize the chair to communicate the results to the city of El Paso and take other actions as necessary. B, approve the terms of continued employment of the CRRMA's executive director and authorize the RMA to continue to reimburse the city for the employment of the executive director. The time is now 9:55 a.m., August 14, 2019, and the CRRMA Board of Directors will now convene in a closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and Section 551.074 for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel for deliberations regarding legal issues and personnel matters. We will reconvene the open session meeting upon conclusion of the executive session.
We're not certain that you read item 10B into the record for
did.
executive session?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it says regarding legal issues and personnel matters. This is the right one that counts for both of them, right?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I read 10B into the record.
Okay. Very good.
I just didn't call it 10B.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Was
So
there a
we're good to
motion
go?
and a?
Oh, I need
was
a
there
motion to
and a
move.
second?
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I'm going to read that we're coming back.
I'll read it if you'd like, I can read it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to do the motions for everything, okay? Okay, it is now 10:54 a.m. on August 14, 2019, and the Board of Directors of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority is reconvening its open meeting after deliberations in executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.074. The board took no action in executive session. We will, what happened here? So, we lost the agenda. Can we get the agenda back on the screen? I have a hard copy.
Here you go.
I have got it. So we will now go back to, just briefly, item 10B, CRRMA's role on the Border West Expressway project. There's no action on this item. So going forward, we will move to item 11. I read it into the record. It was discussion and action on the resolutions as it relates to the annual performance evaluation of the executive director and the terms of employment for renewal of the employment agreement. Mr. Gordon, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, ma'am. On item 11A, there's resolution which reads as follows. Whereas the City of El Paso, the city, and the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority, CRRMA Board, executed a management agreement dated August 8, 2008, wherein the city provides management services in part through the executive director who is employed by the city. And whereas pursuant to the management agreement, the city has employed the executive director of the CRRMA whose performance evaluation is conducted by the CRRMA. And whereas the executive director and the city, upon recommendation of the CRRMA board, executed a renewal employment agreement effective September 1, 2016. And whereas the performance of the executive director for the period ending August 31, 2016 exceeds expectations.
It should be
Now-
2019. I think.
2019, yes, 2019. Let me reread that. Now therefore be it resolved by the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority that the chair be authorized to communicate to the City of El Paso the results of the executive director's performance evaluation and recommend to the City of El Paso that the executive director be paid a lump sum payment of $6,000 in addition to his regular compensation. That's the resolution on 11A.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate
I think once
that.
we get through the rest of it, then some of the board members might have some comments too. So want to do the second one?
Yes, on 11B, the resolution reads, whereas the City of El Paso provides management services to the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority, CRRMA, in part through the provision of an executive director who is employed by contract with the city, and whereas the contract between the city and the CRRMA's executive director expires on August 31, 2019, and the CRRMA desires to continue operating with the current executive director for an additional term commencing on September 1, 2019, and whereas the CRRMA further desires to continue the existing arrangement with the city, whereby the city employs the executive director but is reimbursed by the CRRMA for the associated salary and benefits, provided, however, that the CRRMA approves such salary and benefits. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority that the CRRMA approves the salary and benefits for its executive director as more fully enumerated in Exhibit A to this board resolution, and that the CRRMA hereby authorizes the reimbursement of the city for the salary and benefits of the executive director during the term of the employment agreement, as also enumerated within Exhibit A to this board resolution, and stated today. And Exhibit A, the terms are the same as they were for the existing agreement, except that it is as follows. The base salary is $212,000. And then under merit increases, it should read, employee eligible for annual increases starting effective September 1, 2019, based on annual evaluation by the CRRMA Board per an evaluation process to be developed between the employee and the CRRMA Board. Employees shall receive increases up to 5% in years in which the employee achieves and exceeds expectations or equivalent rating. The percentage increase noted herein may be increased for bonuses, and bonuses may be provided upon the approval of the board. And the rest of the terms are the same as they have been in the existing agreement.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. So I'll let the vice chair take the lead.
Raymond, I want to thank you. Since my first day serving on this board, which is, I think, almost 6 years ago. I'm not sure exactly what my term is, but you've been very open, very accommodating. The complexion of the board or the makeup of the board has changed significantly since you first started. And you have been very open to helping move the RMA forward and have provided great leadership. You keep a calm demeanor in spite of some conflicts that we have had with different entities, and we look forward to having you in the future, and it is a real pleasure to serve with you. Thank you for your service to the community.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Very definitely, Raymond, I work with you an awful lot. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and Robert, but especially you in this context, the fact that you have the ability to grasp vision, looking at things that, and looking at potential. I really look forward to working with you as we chart a path forward for this community and what the RMA's potential is and what we can do for it. So thank you very much for all your advice and counsel.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Also, I'd like to add, I've enjoyed working with you, Raymond. I've learned a lot. You've been very patient and making all the points clear. And so I personally appreciate you.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
And so, of course, I've known Raymond for a very long time in a number of different capacities. And in fact, I helped to convince him to stay with the city and take the position of the RMA Executive Director when he had a really good private sector opportunity potentially at that time. So it's a real pleasure to now be on the board and to see how you've helped lead this organization and all the really significant projects that the RMA has been able to accomplish during your tenure. And so I look forward to working with you over the next couple of years in this capacity.
Well, thank you. And just I'll take a moment. Thank you all for your support. You all have been great. I've really been lucky throughout these years. The boards have been so supportive and willing to do some really innovative things to move the transportation system forward. So I appreciate all of your support. And in particular today, thank you for your vote just now. It's extremely generous, and I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me in terms of continued support and belief and trust in me, and I really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
So, Mr. Studer, do we have to amend our budget? Do you have to do a transfer yet?
Probably. We'll take care of that once we start the year, though.
All right, thank you. Is there any other business?
No, ma'am, I have nothing left.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
What time do we have? I got 11:03.